No person is above the law in this country. Nothing stops us. I don't know how to, maybe I'll say that again. No person is above the law in this country. I can't say it any more clearly than that.
I thought that was funny. That's just because, look, Joe Biden does this all the time. They feel like they can just keep saying something that's very clearly not true, and that'll be just the final word on it. Joe Biden does this all the time. It's amazing. Joining me now, my buddy, columnist Dave Marcus, also author of the book Charade. Dave, nobody's above the law. Obviously, people are above the law. It's horrific for the country. I'm of the opinion that this stuff cannot continue without end, or it means horrible things for this country, which I don't want to see come about. But I don't think they can see that, Dave.
No, I think you're right. I mean, listen, anybody who looks at this Hunter Biden situation and the barely even a slap on the wrist that he got this week from the Department of Justice, I mean, 30 years of Law and Order episodes didn't feature as many crimes as we saw on the laptop, right? And we've seen them all. I mean, they're right in front of us. I mean, who investigated this case? Roscoe P. Coltrane? I mean, this is crazy. I mean, there's just evidence everywhere of prostitutes and crack and lying on gun forms and tax evasion, and not to mention the really important things that involve his dad, which seem to have just been completely ignored. Nobody with any sense who's not completely in the tank for the Democrats is buying this. And look, to your point, you and I have disagreed about this. I'm more optimistic in general, I think, but you're absolutely right. If Americans become convinced that there's really just two sets of laws in this country, yeah, bad things are going to start happening.
Yeah, and I really don't want that. I pray to God I'm wrong about that. But history says that's true. And what drives me crazy, Dave, is these elites. Okay, I don't expect them to be good people. I realize they're all scumbags. I mean, shoot, we all are, I guess, in some way. But how can they not see that? How can they not see that there's an expiration date on not just abusing people, but spitting in their face, rubbing their faces in it, which is really what they do? That only goes on for so long, and then things get horrible.
I mean, I think it's because they're never challenged, right? And then, I mean, we see this with sort of the gender stuff as well, right? There was that hearing yesterday, and Ted Cruz is grilling the witness about, like, you know, why do we have women's sports? Are there differences between men and women? And these people never experience anyone who disagrees with them. And so you're absolutely right. They just make these declarative statements of, like, you know, Hunter Biden was treated completely fairly. And I mean, obviously, we're watching what happens to Donald Trump and all of his associates, right? Paul Manafort went to jail for being an unregistered foreign agent. Does anyone seriously think that Hunter Biden wasn't an unregistered foreign agent? I mean, it's just obviously he was. There's no Chinese company he was working with that didn't have ties to the Chinese Communist Party. This is craziness.
I'm glad you brought up the Trump stuff, Dave, because there's something about this whole Trump thing that's driving me crazy. And I understand Trump tends to make people crazy for both ways. But I feel like the people who are in love with Trump and the people who despise Donald Trump, they're all missing that this is so much bigger than Donald Trump. This means so much more than Donald Trump or Donald Trump going to prison. What this means for America, what this means, honestly, for the West, for freedom, what this stuff means is so much bigger than one man. But if you hate Donald Trump, you don't care, and he deserves it. And if you love Donald Trump, he's just going to MAGA his way out of jail and we'll be fine. And people don't seem to be able to see clearly because of Trump. What is that?
I actually hope that that's starting to change a little bit, because when I talk to people about this stuff, one of the things that I learn is that when Americans see the difference between the way Joe Biden and Donald Trump are treated, right? What they also see is they see an FBI that wants to spy on Catholics in their churches. They see an FBI that wants to take down license plates at a school board meeting. They see an FBI that, you know, does an early morning raid of pro-lifers' houses. So I do think that at least conservatives are getting hip to the fact that you're right. This is not ultimately about Donald Trump. This is about a weaponized Department of Justice that will go after any of us if we don't toe their line.
Hunter Biden's name got brought up by the genius Hank Johnson during the Durham hearing. Here's how that went.
Former FBI Director Jim Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan were not among those three who were indicted. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And to the extreme disappointment of some on this panel, your investigation failed to produce indictments against Hillary Clinton, correct?
That's correct.
Didn't indict Barack Obama.
That's correct.
Didn't indict Joe Biden.
That's correct.
Couldn't even indict Hunter Biden.
We didn't
Correct?
investigate Mr. Hunter Biden.
Dave, you have a piece, excellent piece, breaking down this whole thing. What were your takeaways from the Durham stuff?
I mean, just first of all, in regard to Hank Johnson, the good news is that no island's capsized. So, I mean, at least there's that. No, look, I think my biggest takeaway, like we had already seen the report, right? So we already knew that the most important part of the report was Durham saying that there was markedly different treatment. That was the euphemism that he used between the Hillary Clinton case and the Trump case. What that really means is bias, right? But my biggest I'm glad that you showed that clip, because my biggest takeaway was that even though the FBI has admitted wrongdoing here, right now they claim that they've fixed it all since then, but they admitted that they got significant things wrong here. Democrats are not curious about that at all. They just don't care. And every time a whistleblower shows up, every time a witness who's even vaguely critical of the DOJ or the FBI shows up, they treat them as a hostile witness. You know, they call them grifters. They call Matt Taibbi not a real journalist, right? I mean, this is their playbook. And my message to them is, we can't start to get past this until Democrats are willing to take this at least somewhat seriously. And there's no evidence that that's coming.
Okay, Dave, I hear Durham say things like accountability. I hear him say FBI agents apologize to him. As you pointed out, the FBI has come out and said, well, I mean, we've adjusted some procedures and things like that. And look, I'm sure you will disagree with me, but I look at the history of secret state police agencies that are weaponized against one political party. I genuinely believe the FBI has the capability of destroying the entire United States of America. Eventually, that's not going to happen tomorrow, but it can go that way. And yet no one seems to agree with me on this. Republicans, Democrats, they'll yell about this. Maybe we'll censure this. This is an organization that should be under attack by the GOP. Funding zeroed out. Public trials. This has to get squared away now, or it goes someplace really ugly in this country.
Yeah, no, you might be surprised, but I don't actually disagree with you that much. I think it was about 7 or 8 months ago, one of my editors at the Daily Mail reached out and was like, hey, do you want to write a column saying, you know, we're getting pretty close to needing to say that the FBI has to go away, right? And my initial reaction was, oh, I don't know if I want to write that. I mean, that sounds a lot like defunding the FBI. That's probably farther than I want to go. But as we started going back and forth with just the parade of horrible things that the FBI has done over the past decade, I wrote the column because it's just obvious that they're biased and that they're not being fair. And, you know, we did it. You know, we had the breaking news today from a whistleblower who's saying all kinds of, you know, now apparently we have text messages that say that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were in the same room, shaking down Chinese corporations. I'm in the room with my father. I hold a grudge. I mean, come on, guys. Like, this is, and here's the thing. I do think that this coming 2 days after this sweetheart deal, there are going to be a lot of Republicans who say, okay, this deal has to be off the table right now. And we'll see what happens. I hope that they'll do that.
Okay, Dave, if we can't bank on the GOP actually growing a pair and defunding the FBI, I say the only alternative to this, and this is awful, is a coalition of red states starting to kick FBI offices out of their state, starting to refuse to work with them. And that's awful, right? I mean, that's not what you want, but tell me a third way, Dave. I'm all ears. What's a third way?
The only third way is for a Republican to become president and actually take seriously the job of dismantling all of this. I think that I think Trump wanted to do that, but I think two things happened. I think one, he was such a sort of outsider that he didn't fully grasp right away like how deep all of this stuff was. And he also just constantly had advisors who said, you can't do this. You can't fire that person. You can't do this. You can't do that. So, I think all the GOP contenders now, whether it's Trump or DeSantis or even some of the others, they understand that this laughable notion of the independent Department of Justice and the president can't have anything to do with it, that's got to go. That's got to go away. That's over. The Department of Justice is not independent. It belongs to the people of the United States, and it needs oversight.
Amen. Dave, love you, brother. Come back soon.
Thanks. Oh, congratulations on the book.
Are you tired of watching your beloved nation fall prey to the insidious grip of communism? The Anti-Communist Manifesto by Jesse Kelly is the ultimate guide to fighting back against this destructive force. Discover the shocking truth about communism infiltrating our education system, corporations, and even environmental movements. Unmask the true agenda behind groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter and learn how to protect the United States from the most malicious enemy. With extensive documentation of past atrocities, you'll see the undeniable danger posed by this ideology. Arm yourself with knowledge and join the fight to preserve the American way of life. The Anti-Communist Manifesto, a new must-read book from Jesse Kelly. Get your copy today at jessekellybook.com or wherever books are sold.